What's going on, everybody? So today I want to talk a little bit about hunting cold fronts and the importance of the cold front in the sense of being very precise with your hunting to keep as much hunting pressure off of your primary stands as you can. And it also helps you keep that life to hunting balance in place. With all of us having families and significant others, and obviously we still work, most of us don't actually hunt for a living, that we've got to be able to keep that proper balance in place and yet still accomplish our hunting goals. So what exactly is a significant enough cold front for you to really pay attention to? And really it's any kind of drop, to be really honest with you. I mean, 5 degrees and up is a significant enough drop to get these deer on their feet. But what I've noticed is if you can get more of that 10 degree plus drop, then you get a more significant spike in movement. And especially that a lot of times that day that front's coming in, the temperatures drop. It's also going to be windy for the biggest majority of the day. So I've learned that a lot of the day itself is actually not very good hunting just because the wind is so high. But the moment that wind dies off, those deer are on their feet instantly. And that really, almost every single deer I killed this year, not only all 3 deer were cold front deer, but 2 of which were killed exactly on that same situation. It was extremely windy all day, but the temperatures dropped big time. And right as the evening was getting in, about an hour to an hour and a half before dark, the wind died and it got dead still. And the deer just started moving. So I'm just going to go into detail about how exactly I approached my season last year, how I approached every single one of the hunts that ended up with a deer on the wall. And I'm going to start off, with the first buck I shot, that 9-point here in Missouri. He was a river bottom buck, and I was having some trouble early in October. The scrapes and the deer sign really wasn't picking up quite as fast as it did the year before, which is okay. I was trying to find those properties and trying to find those spots that did have that fresh sign, that did have that fresh movement, because you're going to find it, but you got to keep moving. You got to keep an open mind to keep thinking that maybe my main property wasn't quite producing yet, and I didn't want to put any unneeded hunting pressure on it until I had that sign. So I went to this other property that I've been keeping tabs on, and I found the sign. I found extremely fresh scraping right under a bunch of pin oaks, and I knew I had a cold front coming, so I timed the hunt. I ended up shooting him on October 15th, and you see the whole week there, most of it was high 70s. On the 10th, it was above 80, so it was a pretty warm start to October. And on this particular day, it wasn't really that cold, but what it did do is it dropped below 70 for me. So you see, 3 days prior to that, it was high 70s, and on the day that I ended up shooting him, it was mid 60s. And the trick there was that it was windy all day during that hunt. It was crazy windy, but the deer were still moving, which made me feel very confident. I was sitting next to bedding cover, and I was on a pinch point in a corner of this bedding cover where these bucks had 2 main scrapes under this really big pin oak. So I went in there early, canoed in, set up the stand. I've never hunted this tree before, but I knew this is where I wanted to be, and I just waited it out, and was about an hour prior to dark. Say the wind died off at about an hour and a half prior to dark, and he came by 30-40 minutes after that with 3 other bucks, and got some awesome footage of him sparring on the way in and them competing for that scrape. And that's kind of an example of that cold front not only came in that day, right? But what we also had was we had very significant wind all day, which for the most part kept these deer in the thick stuff. They didn't want to come out of that thick stuff very much. All the movement I saw was they were very edgy. They were all moving very quick. And the moment that wind died off, I got this very comfortable movement, and these bucks, all three of these bucks came in and gave a show, and he gave me a chip shot at 10 yards. So I couldn't have asked for a better situation than that. But that's something to think about too. When this cold front comes in, a lot of times you do have those high wind speeds, which is fine. And let's see here, throughout the day it got fairly warm, not quite to 65 during the day, but you saw it started dropping off there towards the evening time. And I mean, it dropped off down into the 50s there at that point. And the wind speed significantly died off after 6, and that's when it all happened. So similar idea when it came to my Iowa buck, but I shot him at first light. So the cold front came in. I'll back up a little bit. I shot my buck in Missouri, and then a couple days later I took care of all that, then I immediately ran to Iowa. With the scraping being fresh and active, the first part of the scraping, that can be a really fun time to hunt. These deer just started opening up these scrapes, and they're getting aggressive, and they're very localized with the scrapes. They're not widespread scrapes yet. They're very localized scrapes, so you can bet that if you're finding fresh, significant scrapes, you need to hunt it right now. And especially with a cold front, hunt it right now. You could immediately kill that buck you're after that's hunting on, that's working that scrape, or a mature buck in the area that's a local mature buck. So that kind of is what happened in Iowa. Is I ran up there and I just started looking for that same thing, fresh scrapes. And I found it on the first day and ended up jumping a really nice buck that day. And I knew that I just needed to sit it out and wait it out. So I had an encounter with a giant, on day 2 of the hunt, just couldn't get him in and for a shot. And my buck I ended up shooting came in on day 5. And I had a significant drop in temperature. It kind of stayed warm for most of my hunt. And I finally got that drop in temperature on, I want to say that was a Thursday, I think, or a Friday. I can't 100% remember if it was a Thursday or Friday, but that doesn't necessarily matter. But what I had was first light, it was dead calm. This buck came in right down the tree line. It was a foggy morning. I was able to canoe in, super silent, and get him at my tree stand and just wait. And he came in with dead still conditions, cold, frosty morning, that perfect bow hunter morning that we all enjoy to sit in. And he read the book. I mean, it came in for a 10-yard shot. I mean, it couldn't have worked out any better than that. And that was actually my very first, not only hunting Iowa, that week I was up there, but that was my first buck in Iowa. So that was kind of exciting. I was pretty pumped about that. And then I just got him, spent the rest of the day getting him out and drove home. That was a long day, that's for sure. So let's see here. Let's go to my 170 that I shot this year, Big Daddy. So because I shot that 9-point in Missouri mid-October, I actually had to wait till opening weekend of rifle season here to use my second buck tag. So I kind of had to hold off on my main property I was super pumped about, and that's where this deer came from. We had our deer camp that weekend of opening rifle, and man, that property just got hammered with hunting pressure, and we had trouble seeing deer. I mean, we always see deer and we have a lot of fun, obviously, but it just wasn't quite what I was looking for. So I decided to go over to this other property I've been hunting and keeping tabs on, and on a Monday, I went scouting on a Monday. I had some time between clients, and I was like, let's go see what's happening. Let's go see if I can find some fresh scrapes, maybe some rubs, and check out my tree stand location, just kind of see what's going on. Because I hadn't been there, really, honestly, I don't think I've been there since early October, I would say. I had been there for 3 or 4 weeks, probably a month, every bit. So I went in there, I wanted to make it real quick, get in, get out. The weather was warm, so I'm like, let's just go in there and let's do it. And I came across some of the biggest rubs that I've ever seen on Missouri public land. I mean, they're just shredded, and big, fresh scrapes, you know, right in this location that I've got my tree stand set up. And it was just getting hammered. You could tell there's a really nice deer using the area. And obviously didn't know just how big he was, but man, if I were to know what was going to come that day, later that week, that was just awesome. So I knew I had a cold front coming there towards the end of the week, and the cold front was going to hit on Thursday. And after I found that sign, I'm like, I just need to hunt this. So I went ahead, took the day off on Thursday, and went in there and hunted it. And most of the day, actually, honestly, the entire day was extremely slow. I saw one good buck early in the morning, another deer or two kind of sporadically throughout the morning, and it was dead still. But the wind, again, was extremely high all day. And you could tell it just kept these deer down. And my tree stand was actually set up in a really big white oak, which was perfect. Which is another reason that those scrapes were really happening under this tree. So as you can see, a couple days before I hunted, I shot him on the 18th, and you know, on the 16th, 2 days prior to that, the temperatures were above 70. And I mean, that's just a warm week. And the day that I hunted, as you see, I got a drop under 50 as a high. And it looked right around 30 degrees as a low, and perfect day to be in the woods. It was gusty all day, so I just kind of stuck it out. I waited for the right time to hit, and he came by. So I saw an absolute toad of a non-typical an hour before I shot this buck. I could tell right when the wind died, these deer got on their feet and they started moving. Started seeing a lot of does, and saw that giant that I couldn't end up pulling in. I tried grunting at him a couple times, and looking at the footage later, he had his ears pinned. So I'm wondering if he actually smelt the buck that I ended up shooting and tried to go find him. So about an hour after that, my guy comes in. It was starting to get dark, and I knew I was pushing daylight, and he only had a couple minutes. When I saw him, I saw him about 80 yards away, and I could tell he was a giant. I mean, it's just a monster. And I was just hoping that those does would wheel him around up the ridge a little bit where I was hunting. And a couple minutes after I saw him, that's exactly what they did. They came around, they came up the ridge and pulled him, and I just got my camera ready. The camera didn't pick up as much light as what I had, so it looks darker on footage than what I actually had. I had a very clean, ethical, perfect 20-yard shot on this deer, and he came through real quick, so I tried stopping him once, and he got through that. He wasn't paying attention to me. He was only interested in that doe. So I knew I had one more shooting lane to get him stopped, and I almost yelled at this deer to get him stopped, and right when he stopped, I let it go. And I mean, that deer didn't go 60 yards, but he went down that hill fast. But that's another situation. Again, I had that cold front coming, and I timed it just right. Even though most of the day was kind of cruddy hunting because of the wind, I was already set up. I used the wind to be there and ready for him. So right when that wind broke, I was there, ready for whatever activity was about to happen. And let's see here, let me pull up the day here. The day, as you can see, so it got up to, it was above 45, so pushing 50 degrees is a high. you know, right around that 1, 2 o'clock time. And then it dropped off right around 43, I'd say, when I ended up shooting him. And you can see it was gusty all day. And right around that 5:30, 6 o'clock time, you can tell the wind was basically gone. I mean, it was dead still. And I just was tickled to pieces that I shot a deer like that. Not only did I see 2 of those giants hit one hunt, I mean, I ended up shooting one of them, which, I mean, my biggest buck to date by far. But that gives you kind of an example of how you can be very precise with your deer hunting. I stayed out of those stands, and every one of those hunts, I would say, I only hunted the stand that I shot my 170 out of. I only hunted that maybe one other time that season, and that was way early in October. And so it had a ton of time just to sit and soak. And my 9-point was a first hunt, first sit. The Iowa buck was the only stand location that I actually hunted for multiple days in a row before I ended up shooting that deer. But I beat the hunting pressure back to it. So it was kind of a location that I could tell was probably going to be getting hunted once people start getting into it, that late October, early November time, when usually everybody starts hitting the woods. I just beat everybody back to that location and was able to make it real easy access off the river. So I was super silent, low intrusive, and it just worked out perfectly. So if you really pay attention to your weather, you can actually be extremely precise on your deer hunting. You don't have to hunt a ton of hours to be successful. Now, you're gonna have to put in your time, right? But if you scout a lot and you keep an open mind, you find that active sign, and you just wait for that perfect day, that 10+ degree drop, the more significant the conditions are, the poor conditions are, the more significant the deer movement will be when they break. So the heavier rain, the heavier the snow, the heavier the wind, it's going to keep those deer down and in their bedding cover. And then the moment that stuff breaks, those deer are on their feet looking for food. If it's scraping season, they're going to be hitting scrapes. If they're chasing, they're going to be chasing. So plan accordingly, you know, for whatever time of year it is. If it's mid-November, find those spots that you're getting some good rut chasing activity, find the does, and that's exactly what I had at this particular location. But I also had very significant scrapes that were getting used actively. So I hope that helped you guys kind of get an idea of what I do, how I plan and approach my deer season. I've used this tactic forever, and it works consistently. And basically every mature buck hunter, successful mature buck hunter, is going to tell you the exact same thing. Be precise with those cold fronts. Stay out of those significant stands until you find that perfect weather conditions. The less you hunt that stand, the better that stand's going to be when those proper weather conditions come into place. So just be smart about it. If you access it to scout it and see if the deer are there, be very quick. Make sure your scent control is perfect. If you can pick a rainy day or an extremely hot day, a day that's going to keep those deer down and minimize the chances of you spooking deer in and out, the better off you're going to be. So thanks for watching, guys. Please hit that like and subscribe button if you liked the video, and I will see you all on the next video.